thrill of a lifetime is almost impossible to write about because you'd have to live a full lifetime and then go back and remember all the thrills you had. But my idea of a good thrill would have to be probably free falling from a high cliff over a waterfall or something. Thanks.
Teachers and fellow students, the topic I've been given to speak to you for my impromptu today is the thrill of a lifetime. Different people get different thrills. A lot of it has to do with their age, sex and their maturity level. An example of this is that some older boys but with a lower maturity level seek their thrills of how large a girl's cleavage is. Whereas some boys with a higher level of maturity seek their thrills from better things such as frogs or a certain sport they enjoy. One of my favourite thrills of a lifetime was being able to stand up here today and talk to enthusiastic listeners about how people should not be judged by their appearance because you cannot tell what a person's character is, how mature someone is, or whether someone is good or bad at something just by looking at them.
When we asked Mr. Carl what we should say in the speech, he suggested that we take off our clothes and dance around. That is, if we could stand it. But I couldn't. That just wouldn't be the thrill of a lifetime for me, and probably not for you. Which brings me to today's topic. I suppose this means, what is our ultimate desire in life? Well, at the moment, not having to do this speech sounds pretty damn good to me. Yes, the thrill of a lifetime would be that the earth swallowed me up right now. But seriously, I think that the thrill of a lifetime would have to be the day I died. Yes, because then I know I could have the whole of eternity to revenge my death and to revenge other certain things that I have hated in my lifetime. So that is a thrill of a lifetime for me. Not very thrilling, I know, but the only thing that you can think of when you're standing in front of so many people, dying and hoping that the earth will swallow you up.
Mr. Whitman and I have had the pleasure of adjudicating this public speaking competition today, and as is usual, I'd like to congratulate all of the speakers. Now I know that might be a bit of a cliche and it might sound a little bit insincere, but I think that these people have made a genuine attempt to do something that's very difficult. I'm sure that you all appreciate how difficult it is just to get up in front of your class to speak, to get up in front of the sea of faces that I can see in front of me magnifies the difficulty quite considerably, especially if the audience is not as supportive as it might have been. Now there are always two parts to this exercise of public speaking. The speakers play their part, and all of the speakers today played their part very well. The audience plays its part, and I'd like to be able to say that the audience played their part well today, but I'm afraid I can't. I feel that it's extremely disappointing, if not in fact cowardly, for some people to bury themselves in the anonymity of the mob and make supposedly funny little comments, which in fact can be extremely intimidating for the people who are out the front. Now obviously if you've got something to say which is entertaining and witty, it would be much better if you were standing out the front and delivering the speech, rather than making it difficult for those people who are in front. Now, having got that off my chest, obviously the most important thing is what were the results of the speaking competition today. Mr. Whitten and I both agreed that Liz Pridham was the person who did the most effective job, both in the prepared speech and in the impromptu. And it was probably particularly in the impromptu that Liz showed her strengths as a speaker. Even though she may not have spoken for the full allocated time, she spoke very fluently, and she was able to structure her talk in a way that made it very easy to follow, and you could see a logical development all the way through the speech. She also was not quite as intimidated by the audience, and she didn't restrict herself in the way that some of the other speakers did. A lot of the speakers made the mistake of simply saying, well, what would be the greatest thrill of a lifetime that I can imagine? And as soon as you do that, you limit yourself. The idea of the impromptu is to see what you can make of a topic. And most people seem to fall into the mistake of simply saying, I've got to talk about what my greatest thrill of a lifetime is. And once you've said it, really you haven't got all that much else to say. And I think that was something that Liz did extremely well. Her prepared speech was very entertaining, and once again, all very well structured, very easy for the audience to follow. One of the pieces of advice I'd give to all of the speakers is, if you get a response from the audience, even if it's a response that you didn't actually expect, some people laugh in a place that you weren't expecting them to laugh, always wait until they finish laughing before you plough on with your speech. There were a number of times, particularly in the impromptu section, where there was obviously an unexpected reaction from the audience, but the person out in front continued talking, and to be quite frank, Mr. Whitten and I could not hear what was said while the audience were laughing. So we, as I said, had Liz as the winner of the competition and Rebecca as the runner-up. Congratulations to everyone. Another round.
4 minutes and another one at 5 minutes. Then they will undergo an impromptu speech that runs for 2 minutes with 5 minutes of preparation. The first speaker is Sarah Donaldson, speaking on Amnesty.
6 years, 4 months, 17 days in prison, I am free. I walked out of the prison gate with my shoulders unbent, my head unbowed. I can touch the green leaves of the trees. I can smell the sweet scent of flowers. I can share smiles and laughter with the women and children. Surely there is nothing so sweet, so beautiful, so precious as freedom and liberty. Professor Mainawar Kenyatta, former prisoner of conscience, Kenya. Today, thousands of people are imprisoned for their beliefs. Many are held without charge or trial. Torture and the death penalty are widespread. In many countries, men, women and children have disappeared after being taken into official custody. Still others have been killed without any pretense of legality. These human rights abuses occur in countries of widely differing ideologies. Amnesty International is an independent, non-religious, worldwide movement of more than 1.1 million people in over 150 countries, acting on the conviction that governments must not deny individuals their basic human rights. Amnesty works specifically and impartially for the release of prisoners of conscience, men, women and children imprisoned for their beliefs, colour, sex, ethnic origin, language or religion, provided they have not used or advocated violence, for fair and prompt trials for all political prisoners, an end to torture, executions and disappearances in all cases, and any other cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment. Last June, in the southeast Mexican state of Chiapas, 3 young indigenous women were returning to their village after selling produce at a market. At a roadblock, they were raped by 10 soldiers and told that they would be killed if they told anyone. Of the conflict in former Yugoslavia, there have been several reliable reports of public rapes in front of a whole village, designed to terrorise the population and force ethnic groups to flee. In some countries, like Sudan and Iran, hundreds of women have been flogged for breaching dress laws. Wearing clothing contrary to public decency is punishable by up to 40 lashes. Jose Silva, a Portuguese schoolboy, was arrested in 1965, along with 16 other schoolboys and girls, during student demonstrations. Jose was 15 years old. That's like me, just being arrested. Because he was under 16, he was sent to a home for juvenile delinquents, where it was reported he was to be detained until his 16th birthday, when he could be transferred to prison. He was not charged with any offence, and his mother was only allowed to see him once a fortnight. In Bangladesh, some local village councils controlled by Islamists have set themselves up as enforcers of their interpretation of Islamic law. These councils, known as Salish, which are not part of the judicial system and have no legal authority, have, in the past 3 months, ordered the execution, torture or ill treatment of women. A Salish sentenced a girl to a public whipping in May 1994. The girl had been raped about 8 months earlier and had become pregnant. The alleged rapist had been acquitted by the Salish because the crime was not witnessed by 4 Muslim adult males of good repute, as was required by Islamic law. When her pregnancy was discovered, she was declared guilty of illicit sexual intercourse and sentenced to be publicly flogged 101 times. She was 13 years old. But possibly most frightening of all are the disappearances. Imagine your father going off to work and just never coming home, just disappearing. Imagine wondering where he was, if he was in pain, if he was dead, and probably in a couple of years discovering his battered and emaciated body naked in a dump somewhere. This happens right now, as I speak, to real flesh and blood people with a heart and a liver and toenails and a dog and a favourite type of music and a life. And that scares me. It scares me that people can be so inhuman as to inflict such horrible pain on another person. And it doesn't just happen that far away from home. A New South Wales study shows that not one Aboriginal family living in the state in the early 1980s had escaped having children taken and put into institutions. Not one. But in the words of Martin Luther King, the ultimate tragedy is not the brutality of bad people, but the silence of good people. Great wonders are possible if little groups just try to stay faithful to what they believe to be true and just. Amnesty International, through letters, fights for this justice, for the simple human rights of every person. And it works. More than one person has shared the experience of the man in Central America who was told on his release, "You would be dead if so many people didn't know about you." Another former prisoner writes, "For years I was held in a tiny cell. My only human contact was with my torturers. My only company was cockroaches and mice. For 8 months I had my hands and feet tied. On Christmas Eve, the door to my cell opened and the guard tossed in a crumpled piece of paper. It said simply, 'Constantino, do not be discouraged. We know you are alive.' It was signed Monica and had the Amnesty International candle on it. Those words saved my life and my sanity. 8 months later, I was set free." It is this way, says the Turkish poet Nazim Hikmet. Being captured is beside the point. The point is not to surrender. Or as Midnight Oil put it, it is better to die on your feet than to live on your knees. But I always wonder when the crunch came, would I have the strength to stand? My greatest admiration to those with such integrity, to those who have been silenced, and to those who speak for them. Iranian poet and playwright Saeed Soltanpour was imprisoned many times for his writings under the Shah, and then arrested by the new Islamic government and executed after accusing the authorities of torturing people and suppressing freedom. He writes, "Upon this plain of blood roses and iron stalks, I will not stay silent, so hear my voice as it sings in the slaughterhouse."
Back to people's places.
For some strange and unknown reason, parents insist on taking their children to visit friends and relatives of theirs who are among the most boring people the human race has ever produced. What is worse, parents insist during these visits that their children A. dress in smart, uncomfortable clothes, and B. remain silent, with only the occasional spot of quiet breathing allowed.
It has always struck me that this is the perfect example of the hypocrisy of parents. They spend years teaching their children to walk and talk, and as soon as they can, they tell them to sit down and to be quiet. Why do parents insist on taking their children? When their child complains, parents say, "If you don't be quiet, we'll leave you here and go without you." When the child says, "Good, that's what I want," the parents ignore this remark and force their offspring into hideous clothes and bundle them into the nearest form of transport and force them to endure mind-numbing boredom for what seems like 2 eternities. If this sounds like something that has happened to you, this is how to get out of it. This is how to make sure after one visit you are never invited back again. A. Break things. Aim for something irreplaceable, like an heirloom that has been in the family for generations. If there aren't lying around, aim for something expensive, but remember to apologise afterwards. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realise it was there." This will make it impossible for the awful friend or relative to ask your parents to pay for it. On the other hand, if they do have to pay for it, it serves the same purpose. They won't let you back again. There are plenty of things you can dismantle with one sharp pull. For all of them, you can use the same excuse. "It came off in my hand." Useful targets include door handles, doorbells, toilet roll handles, handles of cups, and whiskers of ornamental animals. B. Ruined furniture. Stick the following on your host's furniture: food, vomit, snot, chewing gum, drink, dirty soled shoes. Drop any of these on the cloth-covered furniture. Once your chosen substance has hit the material, smear it in to make it permanent. C. Food. Eat disgustingly. Keep your mouth open at all times and make sure it is always cramped full to overflowing. Talk to people as you eat. Spray food with every word. Talk to more people. Talk to lots of people while eating. It sprays the food in more directions. Choke on your food. Go purple in the face. Clutch your throat. Or don't eat any food at all. This always offends someone who has spent hours in the kitchen preparing it. Pull funny faces as you eat to let everyone know that you think the food is disgusting. And say things like, "Gee, I guess the food isn't as bad as what Mum and Dad said it would be." D. Criticise the house. You can do this directly or subtly. The direct ways are, "Don't you ever clean this house? These chairs look a bit cheap. Do we have to drink out of these cups?" Then there is the more subtle way. "I know the name of a good window cleaner if you'd like it." "I expect it must be lots of fun getting your furniture from garage sales." And last but not least, E. Indulge in embarrassing topics of conversation. "My grandpa suffers from piles. He has to sit on a rubber cushion with a hole in the middle." "Did you hear? My cat's got diarrhea." "Oh, Mum, how much longer do we have to stay here?" "I thought we might have to eat out of a trough because Mum and Dad said you eat like pigs here," and so on. If the host has ice cream, sneak into the kitchen and eat it. If they have a bowl of lollies, eat the lollies as well. Make rude noises as you eat, as if you were suffering from wind, and make sure to never say please and thank you. If you follow this excellent advice, you'll soon be sitting at home, feet on the sofa, watching your favourite TV program in peace. In fact, doing what you want for a change.
Drugs and drug abuse.
Hi, I'm here to speak on drugs and drug abuse. For those who don't know, a drug can be a natural or chemical substance which can be harmful to the body, causing side effects and mental problems. There are many types of drugs such as marijuana, speed or goey, acid or chips, cocaine, heroin and ecstasy. These are just a few of the more commonly heard of drugs. All these drugs, excluding marijuana, are chemical drugs. These are made in illegal laboratories and are sold on the street. These drugs come in the form of powder, liquid or tablet and can be consumed through mouth, snorted or injected. Marijuana, on the other hand, is a natural drug. It is a plant. Various parts of the plant are dried and then mulled and or compressed and smoked. This is grown and also sold on the street. All of these drugs I have mentioned have many side effects. A few of them are drowsiness, tiredness, headaches, nausea, unexplained hunger fits, hallucinations, and many more. All these drugs are addictive and dangerous. Although many people say marijuana isn't, they are actually quite dangerous. Yeah, maybe it seems that it does nothing unless you are a heavy smoker. In some instances this may be true, but after a while it takes more and more to take effect. The smoker then begins to look for something heavier, something stronger, and sooner or later they end up overdosing on drugs. And this is called drug abuse. Although it seems that drug abuse hardly ever happens, it really does. The reason we don't hear about it as often as what it does happen is because there are more important things to show on the news. Not as important, but as it is not realised, people die every day as a result of drug abuse. Just recently, a young girl, the same age as us, died of an overdose on ecstasy. And it was said that she was a first-time user. But what about the actual addicts? Many of our famous role models have also died using chemical drugs, such as River Phoenix and Jim Morrison, just to name a couple. They say that the deaths were caused by drug-induced heart failure. The stereotypical image of a drug user is Aboriginal, famous, or on the dole and doesn't lift a finger. But what happens when the sauce runs out? They get unreasonable, and then they begin to steal to support their habit. And this ends up with the police involved. Others deal drugs for a bit of extra cash and to make quite a large profit in the process. I wonder if the dealers have ever thought that they are contributing to most of the teenage deaths in the world. Although it's not heard of very often, it does happen, more than we realise. And yet again, some still insist that marijuana is harmless and should be legalised. After all that has happened, with people dying from overdoses, allergic reactions and drug-induced heart failure, they still think that natural drugs should be legalised. Maybe they feel by doing this, they will drive the younger generations away from the drugs, but I think this will only turn the users to harder drugs, for the simple fact that they aren't allowed to do it by law and it's rebellious. I think that it will be at least a decade before drugs are legalised, because they haven't found a way to tax the drug, and if the government can't make money out of it, why would they legalise it? Everyone knows that the government doesn't do anything unless they benefit from them themselves. And another reason is because the police cannot detect any drug without a blood test, and because they affect your reactions, they need some way to detect if people are driving under the influence, in the same way they do with alcohol. Thanks for listening.
Teachers and Year 10 students. My topic is on abuse to children, women, men and the elderly, and what harm it can do to the victim. This sort of treatment is suffered by a very high percentage of people, such as women and children, etc. This is something that is wrong, and through this people can be seriously hurt. Some examples of this treatment are as follows. Just yesterday from the Telegraph Mirror, a young gay man, aged 27, was walking down the streets of Taylor Square in Sydney. He was brutally bashed almost to death, and is now on life support. This was done by a bunch of youths who wanted what? A measly bit of money. Come on. Another incident, also in the Telegraph Mirror on Monday, said the 21-year-old man was bashed, robbed and left laying in a pool of blood outside of a motel in Goulburn. This is just 60 minutes away from where we live. What is this place coming to? It makes you want to go home, lock every door and window and only come out during the day. Another article I read was on a female shopkeeper. 4 men bashed her after entering the shop in Rushcutters Bay. They punched her several times before escaping with a small amount of money. Also, this man had a knife, wore a blue tracksuit and had a dark complexion, so if anybody sees him, ring the police. The matter that should have been on the front page of the paper was wife killer insane. A survivor of the Tynanium massacre was insane when he decapitated his wife's head and threw it down the toilet. He then put the rest of her body in the bathtub. This man, Mr. Lee Ning, was not put in jail but only in a psychiatric hospital. Where's the justice? A woman loses her life, but it's alright because Mr. Ning's a psycho. People are getting so desperate it's come to the stage where people as young as 16 have to rob people, bash people and kill people because they don't find anything else to do. Daniel Godley, 19, was at a wedding when he left with his girlfriend in a taxi. From drinking so much, he dropped the keys out the window and then asked the taxi driver to stop. He told the others then to go on and he'd look for them and catch up with them later. After realising he'd left his wallet in the taxi, he forced a lady to the ground, scared her and took off with the car. Less than 10 minutes later, he was dead from running a red light. This lady now, that was forced to the ground, has to live with the fact that if she was a few minutes earlier, a few minutes later, this might not have happened at all. See, people once again are getting to the stage where they're getting desperate. This isn't just endangering them. This isn't just endangering the victims, but they're also endangering their lives as well. The most famous example I have on this kind of treatment is the biggest one all over the world, the O.J. Simpson trial. O.J. was married with children and he used to hit his wife quite a bit. Then one day, Nicole, his wife, and her male friend were found dead. This trial went on for over a year. With more evidence you could poke a stick at, it was pretty obvious that O.J. killed him. But did he? O.J. was found not guilty of murder, and the killer and other killer still runs free. Only 14 days ago, a young teenage youth was at a party. She had quite a bit to drink and could hardly walk. When she was taken home and put into bed, 15 minutes later she awoke and got up. When grabbing a knife and climbing out the window, she crossed the road and stabbed a poor innocent 14-year-old girl that was sitting on her front doorstep. How would you feel it was your daughter stabbed? The most common cause of abuse is alcohol and drugs, and the less you do it, the less this treatment will occur. We should and do live in a society that gives everybody the chance of a decent life. So out of a situation like this, it makes everybody aware of what's going on, and hopefully in the future this kind of treatment will decrease. Thank you.
And all the moments and problems that stick out in my mind. My name. It's not very hard. In total, it only has 5 syllables. It really seems incredible to me that in our increasingly multicultural society, people find it difficult to pronounce. I mean, you say it as it's spelt. People always have trouble whenever they ask me my name. Say, for example, the Year 11 Senior Forum a little while back. And this is just a routine for me, though a little less than some. I met Mrs. Brand before it started, and I told her my name. And from past experience, I emphasised the pronunciation, and I thought she understood. But, as some of you know, she obviously didn't, and after 4 attempts, all she came up with was Salami Salam. And for the next week, the only thing I heard was, "Hi, Salami," and it gets a bit boring after about 100 people say it to you twice, and your teachers mention something about it as well. And do you know when somebody's about to knock you, they always start off with your most obvious fault, or what happens to be unusual about yourself? Well, of course with me, it was, and still is, my name. I mean, I don't understand. Why do people think twisting my name is going to hurt me? It's happened to me all my life. And do you know what I'm thinking when somebody says this to me? I think, very original. Great comeback. Nobody's ever used that tactic on me before. Now this really brings back memories from primary school and all the creative versions people made for my name. Things like Salami Sailor, Sail the 7 Seas, and Sally Boobs. And something not so long ago, Salad Bar. Now I have no idea where these originated from, but people seem to get their kicks out of calling me these names. I've had trouble with my name as far back as I can remember. For instance, when I was 4 and my brother was 3, he couldn't pronounce my name. So for some unknown reason, he called me Minna, which is, some of you don't know, which was what my parents later named my sister. The next prominent memory is from when I went to Mittagong Primary School. And out of the whole 6 years of my life at that school, not once did the principal pronounce my name right. This is particularly bad because we used to have assemblies every month, and most people were bound to get an award at least every 2 to 3 months. And every time I got one, it was the same. He'd always say, Salama, Salam, and I'd correct him, but after a while I just gave up. And here's a useless, uninteresting fact that you'll probably never use in your life again. My first name is a greeting in Arabic. It means peace, that is pronounced as salam. And here's another point, and as usual, a no-win situation. Whenever somebody asks me my name, they never get it right the first time. They always take 2 or 3 or more times to understand. So to prevent this from happening once, I said to them very slowly, Salama, Salem. This way they understood first go, but they got very offended and didn't like me much after that. So when you've all grown up and you've had children and you're deciding on names for them, just remember, if you give them something unusual or something hard to pronounce, this is just a taste of what they're likely to endure. And it's okay, really. Thank you.
A recurring headline, another suicide just before the HSCs. Always try and be better was her motto. Stop at nothing was her last thought. Why? Because we have been brought up, trained, to be this person who no one can beat or step over. If not from our parents, teachers, brothers or sisters, it's the constant competition between our friends and peers. We are always being judged. Didn't someone once say that all people are created equal? Yet, there are always people being placed above them. So many lives have been lost to peer pressure and the pressures of society today. For example, a group of students discussing how their grades are look down upon the others who are in lower classes. They may have the higher marks, but that's not what life's all about. They are being judged by their grades. People make up what they are like and how they act just by looking at them and what classes and levels they're in. This is what has to be changed. Start recognising the people who really try and not just abuse their gift. People who put in their heart and soul into everything and try so hard just to be pushed aside by someone smarter to come along and burst their bubble. I think we should listen to them more as people, not just lower marks and grades. Give them a chance to show what they can do. I think you will be surprised. Why should they be ashamed of who they are? Whether you're in a high or a low class, you should be all treated equally. Many a time I've heard the words, aren't you embarrassed to be in a low class? Or, I would be so depressed if I was in your class. Yeah, right, who's the one that's got the pressure to stay on top all the time? What makes them so superior that they can talk to us like that? You'd be surprised to see how many of the so-called lower students beat the so-called high students in their exams lately. I wonder if people would just stop putting them down and give them a chance for once and give some encouragement, what would happen then? We have been brought up in this world to do one thing, to succeed at all costs, and this is what's killing the youth of today. Thank you.
My parents.
Good afternoon, fellow human beings and teachers. I'm not going to excite you with any tales about the latest environmental issue. I'm going to tell you all about my parents. Alright, I'll start at the beginning. Shopping experiences I've had. It's a usual Sunday morning, I was in bed, and my little brother, who enjoys to drive CDs around the house, he pretends they're steering wheels, you know. Do, comes into my room, that's his blinker, puts on the brake. Amy, come on, get out of bed, we're going Wollongong. So, great. Stand something out of mum on this one. So I get dressed, get in the car, and we pull into Garda's R Us. So, yeah. And we walk around and around. Mum says, oh, those garden oaks cute. That's such a pretty plant. Wouldn't that look really nice next to the daisy? That kind of stuff. And I'm just thinking, buy it. And we come out with a bag of mushroom manure. Now, I don't even know mushrooms, you know,
This brings me to another shopping experience. I don't know if it's your favourite place, but it's my favourite place. Auto Alley, Parramatta Road. So we pull into this place that's giving away free sausages and drinks. Mum wants his car that's all the way up the back, and so they put out every car in the place, and you take this car for a test drive, and anything's got this whirring noise. The man's trying to talk over the top of it, and we're all sitting in the back of the car laughing at it. And anyway, 25 sausages, 4 drinks, and 3 very stupid-looking car salesmen later, we bunny hopped down Parramatta Road in the same car we bunny hopped up in. Judging from these experiences, if your mum or dad ever asks you if you want to go to an auction or a furniture shop, just say no. No. That's something that's really boring with my parents, but there's an annoying part of my mum. It's when my brother's allowed to do whatever he wants and I'm not. And I ask the question, why is he so? Because he's a boy and he can't get pregnant. I'm just going to go now. There's a quite embarrassing little tale to tell about my mum, and that was when I was in the back gate. We were going to a blue light disco. So we pull up out the front of the Memorial Hall. Mum's in a bright yellow van, and she beeps the horn, and she sticks her head out the window. Amy's here! We've all slid in the back of the car, it's me and a couple of my friends. And instead of we're waiting for her to drive off and no one would know we got out of that car, but no, she sat there and waited till we got out of the car and beat the horn as she drove off and waiting. She sort of died all through the disco people were there. Not me! Well, supposed to talk about my parents and my dad. He's like Homer Simpson. So sits on the couch, drinks beer, smokes cigarettes, has a high blood pressure. Blames it on his kids, but it's because of his lifestyle. Eats a lot, quite fat, complains about work. If you ask him how's work, he says it's still there. Yeah. When I think about my parents, I think they're quite fun because, there's never a dull moment in my house. Sitting at the dinner table is just a big laugh. We just hassle each other and that. And it's really cool. Just ask any of my friends. They've been there, sat at my table, just laughed at my parents. My mum's just a lunatic. And I tend to follow in her footsteps. That's the end of my speech. Thank you.
Sarah Donaldson, and the topic is it's enough to make your skin crawl.
The topic I'll be given is that it's enough to make your skin crawl. There are quite a few things that make my skin crawl, so I've taken the first thing that I thought of, and it happens at school. And it happens in that subject which I love so much, science. And yes, I'm talking about dissection. Whenever we did dissection, particularly in life's blood, Mr. Miller used to always say, "Oh, Sarah, don't be a girl," when I tried not to get into it. But it's not some sort of girlish thing, it's just that it just makes my stomach turn. My mother, who used to be a nurse, always says that she could watch open heart surgery while she was living and not feel a thing. But the smell of those little bits of something that ran around not so long ago, and the way it sort of quivers on the tray, and those lovely little blood clots, and the stringy bits, and the bits that look a bit too much like I would probably look inside, it's enough to make my skin crawl. Skin crawl. How many times have we heard this saying in our life? Many, I believe. But where did it come from and who started it? I mean, the fact skin crawling, skin can't even walk. What makes people think it can crawl? A lot of people say that different things make their skin crawl. Such people think bugs make their skin crawl. They see a bug, they'll start screaming and say, "Ew," to make your skin crawl. Other people will be walking down the street and see someone go, "Here's enough to make your skin crawl." But really, what does it mean? So I really don't know, but I'm sure that there is somebody out there who knows what "it's enough to make your skin crawl" means.
So you go into the bathroom and you know how in females' toilets they've always got the baby's change table. There's always a lady in there with her son. She's changing his nappy. And they just do it. You know, no one else would do it in public. No female, only a male. Of course, it's really disgusting. It's enough to make your skin crawl when you see this baby just do it. It goes all over the wall. It is really revolting. And then you see the little kids, just say you're at McDonald's. You're sitting there and you're ready to eat. And you see these little kids, they've got dirt all over them because they've been out in playland. They come in, they've got dirt from one end of them to the other. They pick up their chips and go, do you want a chip? Do you want a chip? To everyone in the restaurant, and you just think, oh, yuck. No one else would do it. But of course, it's kids. They always do it. Only kids, because they don't know how to behave in public. So you think that parents would actually tie them up and leave them in their bedroom. But no, of course not. They never do. It's just not worth it. But you never see the female kids doing this. And then they come and they suck on their fingers. They come and they wipe them down your leg. And you're starting to think by this time, well, I think I might leave now. I've had enough of these kids. But anyway, it is really enough to make your skin crawl. So next time you see a little boy, or sometimes even a little girl, run the other direction. Thanks.
It's enough to make the skin crawl. A lady with 15 snakes, a lady with 27 snakes, 6 pythons, 7 red-bellied black snakes, 3 tiger snakes, and 1 blue-bellied black snake is enough to make the skin crawl. This lady had all these snakes in her house, in cages, in the garage, everywhere, until these people came and got them. Walking through spider webs, which is sticky, silky, and not knowing where the spider is makes my skin crawl. People coming up behind you and scaring you. Or even when it's cold, the shiver still makes the skin crawl. But the most thing is when you're standing up here, shaking for buggery, trying to talk for 2 minutes and make it interesting. Another thing is when you're in science and you have to bisect a leon's heart. You have to tear it in half and observe it and see where all its arteries are and veins and all that stuff, and it's gross. Another thing,
Hay fever, it's enough to make my skin really crawl. In the morning when I wake up, you know how you're in that in-between stage where your alarm goes off and you just quickly turn it off so you hope you can get that extra 5 minutes of sleep before you have to race around? Well, this isn't possible for me because as soon as I wake up, I'm conscious that I have to breathe through my nose, and as soon as I do, it starts to tickle and I sneeze. But I don't sneeze once, I keep on going and going and going. And you never know how many muscles you use when you sneeze. It's amazing. The past gym class, I can really feel my stomach muscles go. Well, of course, I reach over, I get the tissue when I blow my nose. But hay fever isn't like a cold. You know how you can usually get the congestion up and out of your body? Not with hay fever. You sneeze, you blow it out. You sneeze, you blow it out. It doesn't stop. It's a continuous cycle. Now, one way my brother likes to get rid of it is to hag or spag, or as the older generations call it, maybe to spittoon. I find it really disgusting. I don't understand. I ask him, why do you have to do it? Well, I've got to get it out of my mouth. Yeah, but I don't understand. Why does he have to spit right when I'm just about to walk? Another concept of hay fever is itchy eyes. Oh, this is really annoying for me because I have contacts and I can't rub them. I have to just breathe, really just inside there, and it doesn't work. And I always run out of tissues or hankies whenever I come to school. I always bring 2 hankies now because I found that 1 just isn't enough. Lately I found 2 isn't either. And if you've had any experience with coming to school and not being able to get a tissue anywhere, you use the school toilet paper. And boy, does it hurt your nose. Another thing is the pressure building up in your nose when you can't blow out because your nose gets blocked. Now, this is sometimes called a sinus headache. I've gone to the doctor for this because it really got bad and the pain was unbearable. Believe it or not. He gave me, I think some other people might have had, you squeeze something up your nose and it's a liquid and maybe you're supposed to put your head back. But it doesn't work, you come back down and it dribbles straight out. I told the doctor this, so he gave me something else. It was like a Ventolin, they're smaller, and you put it up your nose. You sprayed it, and I can't explain the feeling. It's like, you know when you do a somersault in a chlorine pool and it goes all up your nose? It was like that. Another is, and when you have to go to sleep with this blocked nose, you wake up in the morning, and as you get to breathe through your mouth all night, it's all dry and slimy, and you wake up and it's sort of dried a little bit there sometimes. It tastes disgusting, let me tell you. Now for those of you who don't suffer this, just think it's like having a constant cold. I have to suffer for this for 3 months of the whole year. Thank God for Denizen. Thank you very much.
Have you ever woken up and just look above you and there's a spider that's sitting right above you on the wall? It just makes my skin crawl. And you turn around and they're just everywhere. They're just hanging around everywhere. They never go away. You spray them, they just run under somewhere else, and then you got to worry about whenever they're going to come out or not. Nothing that makes my skin crawl is when you go down the road and you sort of see animals sort of everywhere, all over the road, and sort of run over them and think, oh God, that's going to stick to my tire for a while. Another thing that makes my skin crawl is scary dreams. When you wake up and you don't know what's happened, you sort of just got to put yourself back where you are. And one dream I always had was I was swimming along and Jaws would be behind me, coming along, and as soon as he go to beat me, I'd wake up and then I'd go back sleeping and I had the same dream again. And another thing that makes my skin crawl is when people constantly think it's really funny to run their fingernails down a blackboard and it just feels like you've got no backbone. Other scary dreams are when you wake up and you're in a bed full of snakes and you just don't know what to do. Or you're bushwalking along and you think a snake's bitten you and you're just packing it out and you have a look down and it's just not there anymore and you just go delusional. And that's it.
Yeah, Alan.
As you all know, because 6 people have already spoken before me, the topic is it's enough to make the skin crawl. What is that? Skin crawl? Skin crawl or, I don't know. I think it's when you get that feeling inside you where you shiver and or you feel like you're going to throw up and you feel really gross and numb and tense up. You know, like when you've been summoned to Miss Edison's office. Personally, what makes my skin crawl is watching people brush their teeth. There the spit sprays on the mirror. You hear the bristles going, all the spit in their mouth, and the bits of food coming out of their teeth. Oh, it's disgusting. I had a conversation with a couple of people, and we were talking about food, and we came to Chinese food, and that makes my skin crawl. One of my dad's next door neighbour, she was in hospital, and when she had a baby, they asked her for the placenta afterbirth. A Chinese person wanted it for their restaurant because they cook it and they serve it. And then going to a restaurant. Order a placenta sandwich or something. There's lots of common things that just make your skin crawl, like nails down the board, things like that. One of the worst experiences I've ever had was one night. I just brush my teeth, get into bed, and I'm about to fall asleep, and I feel this thing crawling up next to my head, and I nearly wet myself. And it was my brother. He got under my bed, and he crawled his hand up to my face and stood on my head, and I nearly died. kill you. I also saw my skin calls the night before a competition or something. When I see gymnastics competitions or athletics come, it's like when you're lying in bed thinking of whether you're going to win or whether you're not going to win. It pretty much makes my skin crawl knowing that I'm running for vice captain because it's pretty scary stuff. Yeah, there's all different kinds of skin crawling. That concludes my speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll keep it very brief. The standard of all the speeches were quite pleasing. The confident manner of many of the speakers is very pleasing to see in one so young. And especially, I think this is the first competition I've seen where the impromptus have been of a fairly high standard, where people can actually talk for some considerable period of time, rather than sitting going, so basically, many of the speakers were polished, many of them were quite substantial in terms of their subject matter and so on, but upon deliberation, Mr. Simmons and myself have given the competition to Sarah Donaldson, and with Salva coming a very increasingly nearer second as the impromptus went on. So Sarah, congratulations Sarah, and congratulations to Salva.
Personality, your looks. You could even be named after your parents, which is ridiculous in my mind. And your last name is a ritual. Your family's name maybe could come on for generations before you evolved. A name could reflect on personality, looks, lots of things, but I can't really think of them right now. There are 26 letters in the alphabet, and you must be made up of one of those, even though some can look and sound pretty ridiculous. My name only has 4 letters, but I think it means a lot because people refer to me as Kate. Our family isn't known for fancy names, and you can tell that by my name and my dad's name and my sister's name and my mum's name. Some names are pronounced wrong, which must be pretty annoying sometimes, but I think you must get used to it after a while because your friends must get used to it after a while, so you aren't asked as many questions. Some people make a big deal when they're naming you, some don't. Some take it very seriously, and some don't. There are exotic names, lots. There are royal names, Princess Di, so on. But any name, it's the name you're given, unless you change it. But that's another matter, and that's another story. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. The second speaker to speak on what is a name is Sarah Donaldson.
What is in a name? Well, this immediately brought to mind one of my favourite heroines of my childhood, Anne of Green Gables, whose story I read and reread ad nauseum, and who, when faced with that famous phrase, "A rose by any other name would smell as sweet," replied with wrinkled nose that she was sure that a rose couldn't possibly smell as sweet if it was called something like a skunk cabbage. But then, Anne with an E was always very concerned with words. However, I'm inclined to agree with her. Although, what is in a name? I know, though, that I do find names fairly important. I would hate to have a really terrible name, but I won't go into details about my really unfavoritist names for fear of offending anyone who's here. Although I will share with you the 2 worst names I've ever heard in my life. The other day I was told a story of twins that were born locally, twin girls who are named, wait for it, Wayneen and Craigette. Actually, the other day I was thinking about names and how funny they are, a few syllables of sound that we respond to. I was also thinking how strange it was that we all didn't have different names. When asked, "Who are you?" I reply, "Sarah." But so do thousands of other lucky girls. How strange that I don't have a word attached to me that is just me. Maybe there isn't so much in a name after all. It's what comes behind the name that's important.
And thank you, Sarah. Next, we'll now speak on what's in the name.
Okay, so we all know that a name is something that we call each other. It could possibly be their real name, as mine is Maximilian, or it could be a name you call them for the fun of it. Real names, as in Maximilian, often have a lot in them, as in they have a meaning of some sort, or they've got a fair bit of history. They were made up a long time ago. Mine, Maximilian, is actually Roman, from around there somewhere. It's comprised of Maximus and Aemilianus. I can only guess that Maximus probably means maximum, and Aemilianus means good, or something like that. So you get real names. For instance, Glen. A glen could often be found in England. It's a nice little place, just near a brook or something. A brook is some sort of like a little river or a little creek that would be near a glen. There's also lots of, like, in the playground, I'm sure we call each other names that are mean and stuff like that. Like, if you call someone a square, you're obviously implying something. So there's definitely something in that name for you to be calling them that. There's lots of different names. Like if you call them a clown, the meaning of that would be that they're being a clown. And of course there are lots of nasty names which involve expletives to say. So I won't repeat them up here, but they always have meaning in them to a certain extent. So, as you can see, there is quite a lot of hidden meaning in a name. Thank you.
I'd like to call on Amy Johnson, who will speak on what's in a name.
Ladies and gentlemen, what's in a name? So many people these days are labelled according to what music they like, or what clothes they wear, or other things like that. Gay is the most common word to describe lots of things. A game of netball, a song. How can these be gay? Names are very important and can split schools and all kind of groups into sections. There can be groupies, the type of people who listen to all the popular music, wear the right clothes, do all the right things, or grunge gods, etc. Names. You want to have good names for your children. It could end up being a focal point in the child's life. If someone is called Wayne, you immediately think of a dad who smokes, hasn't showered for ages, and has a shocking haircut. Names are very important and can be the cause of teasing or popularity, so choose them carefully. Once I was listening to a radio station and it had all different people ringing up and telling about names and what names they have heard of lately. One person rang up and said, "I wanted 2 boys, but I got 2 girls." And so, Wayne and Cricket. Choose your names carefully.
The fifth and final speaker for the Arkives is Liz Pridham.
Last night, I was lying in bed, trying to think of all the possibilities that the English staff would come up with this year. But I never thought of this one. Yes, they have really excelled themselves today. Today's topic is, what's in a name? I have a feeling I'm now supposed to go into a psychological spiel, but why? So what is in a name, besides a whole heap of consonants and vowels? Well, there is a meaning. Every name means something. I formally wasn't going to disclose this information because it's just too embarrassing. Well, I'll give it to you anyway. The name of my property is Marimba. A nice enough name, you'll probably agree. Wrong. In Aboriginal, Marimba means dead. Yes, that's our name, a symbol of our pride and heritage, a name that gives freedom a meaning. So what's in this name? There is history, a presence in every name. The name makes an object what it is. Our property means dead, as we've already established, that's quite appropriate. A name gives meaning to something. It is what influences our decision to like it or hate it.
Christian Timbrell, Peter Young, Stephen Crow, Gus, Jake Warwick, Peter Borgwick.
From Year 11, Leah Hooper from Year 8, Ben Romney from Year 7, and Max Stanton from Year 10. First of all, Miriam Lyons will be speaking on Do We Ever Really Grow Up?
Mum, I don't want to go to school today. But dear, you've got to go to school today. But the teachers are always picking on me. The kids call me names and they write stuff about me on the desks. The toilets stink. I hate the place. But dear, you've got to go to school today. Give me one good reason why I should. Well, after all, dear, you are the principal. Ladies and gentlemen, do we ever really grow up? Let's first look at how we are meant to grow up. Is it from experience? From watching people who set the right example? Are we grown up when we have responsibility or when we have enough knowledge? We spend a great deal of our maturing years getting an education at school. But does going to school actually help us mature? The typical school curriculum is obsessed with filling us up with facts. But does the knowledge that A equals B squared and that America was discovered in 1492 really make us more grown up? Does that tell us how the world works? Maybe in school there should be specific classes for life, like how to deal with cranky bosses, how to maximise your tax return, and how to save your marriage from divorce. Perhaps the best way to understand what it means to be grown up is to understand what it means to be a child. So, what is childhood? Is it the stage where we are irresponsible, where we don't understand the meaning of cause and effect, and when we bicker amongst ourselves? Going by this definition, it would seem that our honourable members of Parliament consist of a kindergarten class. In fact, the behaviour of some of our senators seems more appropriate to the sandpit than the Senate. Politicians aside, the fact that adults in general can be remarkably childish brings us to the question, do we ever really grow up? Examining the behaviour of children and comparing it with ways some adults act, we would have to say emphatically no. There are some who hold the opinion that we are really living life backwards. It would seem a valid one to hold, as we often do seem to get younger the older we get. Perhaps eventually our retirement villages will be equipped with seesaws and swings. We already have basket weaving and finger painting for the elderly. Just think, if we started life from the other end, we'd start with retirement, playing lawn bowls, going on senior citizens coach trips, and joining craft classes. We would then proceed to be eased into work, watch our kids get younger, become single and go to university. Then, during high school, would come the painful period of adolescence, where we would become children. And during our declining years, we'd spend our time playing with Lego, Cabbage Patch Kids, and toy trucks. After which, we would do gradually less and less, until life ends with a bang at the moment of conception. It's easy to look into history and find examples of people who've stayed children at heart. It makes you wonder whether there's really a Peter Pan in all of us, the little kid who doesn't want to grow up. I recently heard the phrase, the only difference between men and boys is the size of their toys and the cost. The same phrase is true whether comparing the high-flying executive with his Ferrari and mobile phone, the 5-year-old with his new Tonka truck, or whether you look into recent history. For instance, during the Cold War, politicians of both Russia and America strived desperately to have the bigger arms, the better bombs, to be first in the space race. For years, the leaders of both countries concentrated on being able to stand and proudly say to their citizens, our bombs are bigger than theirs. When you look at the petty ambitions of these politicians, you feel like simply saying, oh, grow up. Grow up is a phrase most often said to children. But who do they want us to grow up to be like? Jack the Ripper, Saddam Hussein, Adolf Hitler? And consider this fact. All the major problems in the world, the hole in the ozone layer, the threat of war, have been caused by decisions made and carried out by adults. In light of the damage done to the world by grown-ups, the question becomes not should we, not do we ever grow up, but should we ever grow up? It may be a bad idea to throw away our childhood entirely. All the interesting people in the world, the artists, the singers, the writers and the actors, are all people who have never lost the road back to childhood. They've kept the best parts, the imagination, creativity, the childlike ability to believe in anything. In these jobs, childhood is one of your best assets. Childhood has many things to be valued. As we get older, we seem to lose our idealism. As we learn the bitter facts of life, we tend to lose that clear and untouched knowledge of right and wrong. The certainty that we should save the whales, that we shouldn't log the forest, becomes clouded by yes buts and what ifs. It would be interesting to see what would happen if children ruled the world. I'm not suggesting we all fly off and join Peter Pan in Neverland Land, but I think we might find a lot more would actually get done. Maybe they, where all adults failed, would manage to cut through the red tape of our bureaucracies. So, in conclusion, we've seen that many adults, for better or worse, have managed to keep all or part of their childhood. Perhaps, all things considered, we shouldn't be in such a hurry to grow up. But don't take my advice. After all, I'm only a kid.
Okay, Erin CAHILL is next with her speech. Ladies and gentlemen, do I have a deal for you?
Ladies and gentlemen, do I have a deal for you today? Is your life less than perfect? I know mine is. Well, we can offer you the solution to all of life's little problems with our wonderful new product, television advertising. Thanks to television advertising, we now know how to look good, feel good, be successful, popular, happy and well-adjusted, and all we need to do is buy the right products. Children are probably the best target for television advertising because without question they will accept the images that television portrays to them. In fact, lately there's been a lot of concern expressed about children's inability to distinguish between television programs and television advertisements. And it's hardly surprising when the advertisements mimic the shows that they watch. Very often, the toys which are presented are based on the television shows that children watch, giving them the chance to participate in what would usually be cartoon fantasies. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these don't have to be violent like X-Men or the recently controversial Power Rangers. No, they could also be sweet and cute, or educational. After all, this is what television advertising is all about, the freedom of choice. Teenagers are big business for television advertising. Well known for our ability to turn insecurity into conformity, it's a great comfort to know that if we wear the right clothes or the right shoes, we can become instantly popular. That pimples, life's cruel way of making us outcasts, can simply be washed away, and that life's ultimate experience is Pepsi. But that's not all, ladies and gentlemen. You can have this and live in a world that is safe, free of responsibility and free of adult interference for absolutely no extra charge. In television advertising, the adult world is a very serious place which is full of responsibilities. Luckily, the solutions to the problems are still absolutely simple. Looking good is, of course, an important part of being a responsible adult. Just when you thought it was safe to eat lunch, along comes Gloria Marshall. Now, we all know that being overweight is a bad thing, but you too can lose that ugly excess weight just by paying money for our calorie-controlled diet. But I know you want more, ladies and gentlemen. Not only will you look good, and let us admit it's a reasonably petty and shallow goal, but you will also delight your children and rekindle that relationship with your husband. What a great offer. Gentlemen, you too don't get left out. You can improve your lifestyle and career prospects. Baldness and grey hair is probably the cause of your problems, but we can make you look younger and therefore be more successful with our wonderful range of hair care products. Family responsibility is something which weighs very heavily on the shoulders of adults, but it's good to know that we can keep our families healthy with the right breakfast cereal, safe with blockout shutters or a Volvo, warm with natural gas or clean electricity, financially secure with the right insurance policy, and happy with a snack that won't ruin their appetites. Of course, feel-good advertisements such as these need to come with feel-good programs. After all, not too many Big Macs are sold during a program about third world children dying of starvation, and Gloria Marshall seems just a bit petty in comparison. But the point of television advertising is to make us feel comfortable, to allow us to feel in control of life's little problems, to let us know there is a perfect lifestyle in this imperfect world. And ladies and gentlemen, it can all be yours today, and all you need to do is keep on paying. Thank you.
Next we have Leah Hooper from Year 8, and she'll be talking to you about birthdays.
Birthdays. Birthdays are one of the things which the whole world has in common. Yes, it is actually possible for millions upon billions of people to have something the same. Now, we're all born on a day, so we all have a birthday. But obviously, you're not the only one born on that specific day. But whether it be the 13th of June or the 29th of December, your birthday is still very much your special day. When you were little, you loved birthdays. You wait for ages for them to come around, and the week or two leading up to them goes so slow. Well, when you're young, you wake up at 5 o'clock and run into Mum and Dad's room. But then, of course, Dad yells at you and tells you to come back at 6:30. But there's a little problem there, you see, you can't tell the time yet, so you make a few mistakes. And we all know how when you're waiting, 5 minutes seems like about 5 hours. But when you finally do get it right after the 20th time, you drag Mum and Dad very unwillingly into the lounge room. They put your presents in front of you, and then your sisters join you. You want to tear them open, but when you're older you have to be polite and read the card first. But when you're little, this really doesn't matter. Now, when I was little, I was always a little disappointed when I opened my presents, because instead of finding a Little Miss makeup doll or a Barbie folded funhouse, I found clothes, books and hair ribbons. I was still very grateful. Just because I didn't get what I wanted, it didn't dampen my spirit for the day. As your birthday progresses, the family come over for the traditional birthday barbecue. But what is it always with parents? That they bring the presents into the house, put them on the kitchen table, and then leave them there for 2 hours. This is the worst punishment for a little kid. But in my family, it's a tradition. Finally, after lunch, when everyone's full, it takes Mum quite a while to get that, you get to open the gifts. Every year, my grandmother surprises me with the jumper. Big enough to be a dress, and for the rest of the year, you have to tell her how much you love it and practically live in it. Well, you know, you could. Then come the aunties and uncles' presents. Now, I really do love my relatives, but I wish my Auntie Jeanette would stop thinking that every girl loves fluoro pink. Every year, without fail, my sister and I receive identical fluoro tops. Karen, my sister, gets orange and I get pink, and I hate it. Now, just when you think your birthday is at the lowest point, Mum produces the card from your grandpa in England. You open it and it says happy 12th birthday when you're only 11. Maybe he's trying to give you a hint. But then you open the actual card and find the $20 inside and all is forgotten. For the next few moments you are quite content, thinking of what you can buy with your fortune. But then, of course, Mum has to bring out the dreaded cake and the awful singing starts. Every year, for every birthday, for every person, the same awful song, Happy Birthday to You. It has 7 different words, 4 different lines, and still no one can get it right or get the tune right. At least at Christmas you have an excuse because there are lots of different songs, but there is only one birthday song. After singing, if you dare call it that, everyone waits for you to blow out the candles. Another thing which I do not understand is why there is 12 candles when you're only turning 11. People say the extra candles to grow on, but please, you cannot grow on a candle that big. Or maybe it's saying you should grow the 6 centimetres taller that the candle is. I just don't understand that one. Then after you blow out the candles, you have to cut the cake. Now this tends to be really embarrassing if you just happen to be standing next to your boy cousin who's 9 months older than you. Well, I'll never make that mistake again. Now you know that your birthday is nearly over. The relatives leave, kisses and hugs, and oh how I really love your present, which now has a permanent home at the bottom of your drawer, and will only surface when you visit next, but you don't tell them that. It's over. Time to sit down, relax, and watch the others clean up. Well, it is your birthday. And now you have that happy thought that there's 356 days and a quarter till the next one.
And then speaking on Year 7.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow students, today I will talk to you about Year 7 and survival. Transition from primary school to high school is a big one, especially if you come from a VOCA. Many myths and fears exist about the step up. Most of these are about what the seniors do and what will happen to you. You also hear about the labyrinth of corridors in which are found corpses of those who have perished in the quest for E38. He who never reached the holy grail of secondary learning. Another worrying thing is that you seem smaller than just about everyone around you. Homework, the unceasing burden placed on secondary students. Maths seems the most regular contributor to the spare time pillar, but English is still in the running for the Keeping the Youth of Today Occupied award. It is hard to keep a good balance between homework and things you enjoy, like sport, creative activities, or both. In fact, the other day I found the balance. That night I had to do a newspaper-style report for Mr. Arkives and half a maths exercise. Some hours after I got to bed that night, my sister heard a noise coming from my room. When she went to investigate, she found me standing there in the middle of my room, half asleep, with my eyes open and my Qantas eye patch raised. When she asked me what I was doing, I replied, I'm having a quick game of basketball, which proves a balance can be reached between homework and recreation. School causes exhaustion. I'm sure many parents find their children literally fall in the door at the end of a school day. Exhaustion can be caused by overworking or just making people think. A few weeks ago I had a fair bit of work and I found I did a lot of sleepwalking. This indicates my brain was still working even though I was asleep. As a result, you can wake up the next morning and find you're as tired as you were the night before. Over a while, exhaustion builds up and weakens the immune system, which means you're more liable to catch disease. So teachers, if you get aggravated by waves of coughing that sweep across your class, think about it. It all comes back to you and the amount of work you're giving them. Other symptoms Year 7 students suffer from are spinal injury from having to carry heavy textbooks and crick necks from always having to look and speak upwards. In fact, scientific tests being conducted in Arizona showed that exhausted Year 7 sleep as well or better than Bradypus tridactylus, which is better known as the South American sloth. I'm sure in these short months you have seen characters developing in Year 7. Here are some of the more noticeable ones. Big Al. Now you really can't miss him, and he has a tall tale for every situation and occasion. Al the Rhino describes him well, for no one's game enough to tackle him in football, and his bellowing voice would frighten even the toughest game hunter. George Stanton, brother of Max, is another recognisable character. George comes from the booming industrial capital of the world, Avoca, so he is used to being a little fish in a big pond. He is a dedicated follower of his idol Jimi Hendrix, about whom he knows all sorts of facts. For instance, that Jimi Hendrix used to wear his guitar while going to the toilet. He is also renowned for his escapades with fire and prank phone calls. Some other up-and-coming characters are Alfio de Bella and Scott Motley, who's better known as Buck. The fact I haven't mentioned any girl characters is not because there aren't any, but because they aren't as loud or as obvious as the boy ones. An important technique for surviving Year 7 is to eat more, and Justin Kingdon is a fine example of someone who's fully developed this technique. But I'm sure there's many of you who find you're having your breakfast in the afternoon. For example, toast, cereal, or a personal favourite, Wheat Bix, honey, sprinkled with Milo. We Year 7s have almost made it through our first year, Year 7. And though the older members of our community say that our generation isn't as tough as theirs was, I think anyone who makes it through Year 7 should consider himself an Aussie battler.
From Year 10, and his speech is still unknown.
What?
Still unknown.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, I am sure that in the past couple of years at high school, you've been asked to write a speech for one teacher or another. And I'm also sure that you have found this quite important. Over the next few minutes, I'd like to share with you my experience of trying to write a speech. Okay, I got home, I procrastinated a bit, and I finally went to my room, lay on my bed, and I tried to think of a topic for a speech. So I'm lying there, on my bed, just thinking. I turned some music on, and I thought a bit more. Music? Was this a possible topic? No. So I turned the music off. After several hours of this most intense thinking, I realised I would have to turn to my most reliable source of speech writing material, the big bookshelf. As I stepped into the dimly lit bookshelf room, it loomed above me, and I knelt down in respect of its sheer awesomeness. And it seemed to creep as in recognition of me. I stood up, and I stepped forward, and I began a dissection of the lower shelves. Now, as you can imagine, I came across millions of really interesting books. But as I only have a few minutes to talk to you, I can only mention a few. The first book I came across was called You Be the Jury, Courtroom 3. I opened this book intrigued and found that I was asked to decide whether it was a wild raccoon or the lady's dog that had attacked the next door neighbour's geese. This would definitely not make a good speech. I could just tell. The next book was Why Did Halley's Comet Cross the Universe? And other spaced out riddles, jokes and knock-knocks. I looked inside and found to my delight a whole heap of absolutely hilarious jokes. For instance, what is the favourite place in the universe for a thirsty cat? The answer? The Milky Way. Question, why are Martians green? Answer, they forgot to take their airsick pills. Here I closed the book, and I thought about my audience. I thought I didn't want you to kill yourselves laughing, so I moved to the next book. This next book just happened to be the pop-up book of the facts of life. I opened this book with great anticipation of what was to be inside, and found, poked in my face, an erect cardboard penis. I'm quite sure there is no need for an explanation of why I closed this book just as quickly as I had opened it. I moved on to the brand new Monty Python Pack-a-Block. This book looked promising, but on further inspection, I realised it could offend those very religious people. You see, it contained God's school report. God failed every subject except for woodworking. And what seemed like hours, I finally picked up the 1811 Dictionary of the Vulgar Tongue. And on the cover there was one hell of an old-time party going down. People hurling on dogs, people being hit on the head with bottles, and even a couple doing a bit of horizontal folk dancing. This book was an excellently entertaining look into the slang, wit and humour of the 18th and 19th century in England. Those were the days when a phlebotomist was a teacher, a carrion hunter was an undertaker, and a buttock broker was a matchmaker. There were lots of words that we use today that had different meanings way back then, like high living meant to lodge in a garret or a troop band. A faggot is a standing soldier. And with apologies to all the feminists in here, to live meant to lie together. And last but not least, I was really quite amazed to find that a pig has always been a policeman. This book was wonderful in every way and absolutely perfect for writing a speech. And so now I am eternally grateful to the Big Bookshelf. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the times they are changing. Who could deny this as a topic? The current times are very busy in terms of change. More inventions, just to name one example, more inventions have been made in the last decade than in the history of the world. Things are constantly changing, from medical practices to social views. It's the way of the world. Although we could in fact argue against this, because some things never change. We still have wars, and wars are about the beginning of time. In this way, times they aren't changing. There's the newspaper, the Times. In fact, all newspapers and media today are continually reporting things that are very different from what has gone before. Things like social changes. We now have advertisements for the Mardi Gras, something which never would have been accepted a century ago. There's advertisements for things like abortion, something which never used to go on. And all these things are part of the social and economical and changes which have always been going on. But there are some things that never change. For instance, ladies and gentlemen, there are still cheats, liars, there are still people who will not let other people have a proper go. In fact, these people have been around since the dawn of time. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have politicians. Need I say more?
The times they are a-changing. Famous words, ladies and gentlemen, famous words. At a time of music which is very dear to my heart. A time when music meant something. Words from a song of the same era, Masters of War, about a man who's been sent to war and how unfair it is. And the words say to the person who is sending him, "You're not worth the blood that runs in your veins." Now, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you, at a time when the Vietnam War was on, that meant something. Songs meant something. Not like today, to take an example. I love myself, I want you to love me. I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, where is the comparison in music then and music now? These folk songs revolutionised the world. People sat at demonstrations, singing with their guitars, trying to change what they saw as the injustices of the world. Today, yes, John Farnham may do a relief concert for the drought. But really, how does that compare to the music of that time when everybody could join in, when everybody joined together through music in order to change the world? Now, of course, this music was overtaken by the infamous Beatles, and who could argue with their music? But I tell you, ladies and gentlemen, The Times They Are A-Changin' was a song of an era of music which revolutionised the world and which has no comparison to music ever. Thank you.
have Leah Hooper from Year 8.
The times are changing. Of course they are changing. We are always progressing. As technology advances, we produce fax machines and computers. The weather patterns are changing. Take the drought for an example. It's a change, not a good change. We in the Illawarra are under water restrictions. Our dams are declining slowly. We think that we have it bad because we can't wash our cars or water our plants, but some people, they can't grow their crops or their cattle. This is a change which is not for the good. This would not have happened 2 years ago because we had rain. We can't stop change. It is forced upon us, whether we like it or not. If we stop change, we would stop the world. We would stop ourselves growing. We are all changing every day. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow students, today I'll be talking to you on that the times are changing. The times are changing. This is proved in the sense that whoever wrote this topic shows that they can't spell because they wrote the changing without a G. Whereas a while ago an English teacher would have been able to spell. Today, English teachers can't. It also is showing that we're coming into a new, because as my mother's hair gets whiter, their generation gets older. As we go into new times, we find a cure for a new thing and a more obscure disease comes up and takes its place. And so over the time, things just change and we end up finding new things we have to find cures for or answers to answer. A couple of days ago I heard a radio reporter say there's no use buying a computer these days, within 2 weeks it will be updated. So with that I'd like to finish saying that the times are changing.
Last of all today we have Max Stanton.
Okay, the times are changing. Many people use evidence to prove that they have a change and they are a change. For instance, money in Australia used to be in pounds and shillings, things like that, but now they're dollars and cents. And the times are still a changing. For instance, pollution from water and air probably has always occurred, but it's only now that the times are changing that people are starting to realise about water pollution and air pollution. For instance, global warming. It's probably been happening all the time, but only now that the times are changing do people realise that the world's heating up. There's things like world interests. For instance, back in the 50s, murders and crashes, car crashes, that line the front pages of newspapers and the headlines of news all the time today wouldn't have even got a mention in news back in those days. This is another thing that proves that the times haven't changed and still are changing. Things like even shoes are changing. You used to get old thin soles, as they were called, which were just a piece of canvas on a piece of rubber. And now you've got these huge things they call shoes. And times still are changing. For instance, computers. They started off with huge, big floppy disks, and now they've got. Well, then they went to little floppy disks, then they went to little hard disks, and now they've gone to CDs, or CD-ROMs, and times are changing.
Having a new speedboat. we went fishing again. It was this nice sunny day, and all of a sudden, all these clouds went above us. It looked like Cyclone 3. Anyway, it started pouring. We didn't know where we were going. We kept on going. We finally came to this place, deserted island. We landed there. There was no one there. There was no one there but all trees and palms and lots of coconut trees. Anyway, we found a place that we can land so we can have a barbecue. We found some squid, found a few octopuses, found fish. We cooked them all up, we had lots of stuff to eat. After we finished that, we threw all the guts and stuff left all the way to the fishes. And then we went back to shore, caught some more fish on the way. We went to the fish shop, we sold them. We went, anyway, about my dad, how his leg got chopped off. Well, the doctors gave him a wooden leg. The leg got a bit, like what happened, a shark bit half his leg off when we went fishing.
Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you've been most impressed by this exhibition of public speaking. I'm pleased to know Mr. Bobney can spell. And I think at this stage, since we're running out of time, there's no need to go into the ins and the outs. I think you're the best judge. And I'm sure you would agree with, and this is what I should mention to you. You may have noticed the teachers at the back of the room. See them? Yeah. Look, they've just been shuffling pieces of paper. They've had no part whatsoever in any adjudication. It's been entirely done by this child here, who in fact has it in the envelope. Envelope, please. Now, this is unknown to me. Thank you. And the winner is Mr. Stats. No, Erin Carl. Well done. Thank you very much.
Set now, and the only answer I could come up with off the top of my head was, I'm wearing this hat, and it's a Melbourne hat, and I throw this challenge down to the members of the opposition. If they can come up with something better than that from any city in the world, then I'm afraid they win, but it's not possible. Let's have a look at the hat. It's beautiful, it's brilliant, it's fine, it's coloured, and it jingles. But let's move on to some serious, substantive matter. And the theme of our case today will be that there is no substitute for quality. And by quality, we of course mean Melbourne. And all Melbourne stands for. Its culture, its sport, and its entertainment. Funnily enough, that's what I'll be discussing today. My second speaker will move on to tell you about Super Jeff and how democracy really is democracy in Victoria. And also the A to K of reasons why Melbourne is better than the rest of the world. Unsurprisingly, the third speaker will discuss the L to Z of these arguments. Okay, now let's move on to some of my more interesting, more important and fine reasons for Melbourne being the greatest city, the only city in the world. The culture. We've had Sunset Boulevard drags kicking and screaming by Super Jeff back to Melbourne. We've had Phantom of the Opera play time and time and time again. And what's more, we've got the ethnicity. We've got the multitude of races that give us the diversity that makes Melbourne something for everyone. Something for everyone, that is, who understands soccer. Now, that, of course, is another reason why this topic was set now. The World Cup doesn't mean anything anywhere else in Australia, I have to tell you. So, moving very, very quickly onto why sport is important in Melbourne and why it makes Melbourne great, we've got the Commonwealth Games, ladies and gentlemen. All the gold medalists came from Melbourne. It's quite simple. Without us, you wouldn't have won. Then, the entertainment aspect of Melbourne. Jeff Kennett, Rolf Harris, U2, Madonna, all on a par, all very funny, and they all make the Blue Oyster Bar pale into insignificance. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's very, very simple. There is no substitute for quality.
Thanks, Tim. Well, how do you cap that? Jeremy Hymans is going to have a go.
Ladies and gentlemen, spookily enough, we think the affirmative's definition of the word city is absolutely outrageous. Because we think that a city is obviously one of those lounge things that you sit on. So that's a settee. But what about the word the? We think it's very, very suspicious that they've conveniently forgotten to define the word. Suspicious. Now, ladies and gentlemen, my first speaker, which is me, will be proving Thermat's last theorem in 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Good luck to me. My second speaker will be discussing pet rocks. How funny. My third speaker will mention the remarkable coincidence that Melbourne means boring place in Aboriginal. And my fourth speaker will again discuss Canberra nightlife. And if they don't follow this, that's bad method, and that makes me a better speaker than you. Ladies and gentlemen, none of my team members will be making jokes about Jeff Kennett this morning because, frankly, that would be kicking a cripple. But Joan Kerner, on the other hand, you've heard this one before. I love rock and roll. Put another vote in the ballot box, baby. Now, you know, look, I looked up Melbourne on the dictionary in the 5-minute interval we had, and you know what it said? The capital of Victoria. Now that's an example of a joke without a punchline. You know, Melbourne is a joke without a punchline, and I have a feeling that we'll be hearing a few more of those this morning, kiddies. And now a joke courtesy of Charles, the production assistant. The affirmative say Melbourne reigns supreme. We just say it rains. Who thinks that's a bad joke? We do, Chucky. We still do. Ladies and gentlemen, whenever I go to Melbourne, I get so bored, I ring up television. Sorry, I don't ring up television, I ring up telecom for some saucy entertainment. And it says, on the third stroke it will be, and then they censor out the good bits. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to end with the typical cry of every Melbourne resident. Start spreading the news. Doo-doo-doo-doo. I'm leaving tonight.
Thanks, Jeremy. Second speaker for the affirmative team now, Tanya Dimitrino.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, he thinks he's so funny. And I tell you what, we're going to fight fire with fire. We can sing too. I think an appropriate song for Jeremy would be Shut Up Your Face. Now, when you have to discuss whether or not Melbourne's the best city in the world, you have to look at the competition. And that's what we're going to do today. That's what we've already done. We're going to do it again. We're going to look at the competition. We're going to go through the alphabet. I'm going to do half, and my third speaker will do half. Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. It's hard to spell. Auckland, it's in New Zealand. Belfast, it's a city of peace, love and understanding. Baghdad, I'd like to live where Saddam Hussein does not. We have Calcutta up there with the best, although they could do with a public transport system. We have Chernobyl, a town with an inner glow. We have Darwin, as our Prime Minister said, the best way to see Darwin is 35,000 feet above the ground on your way back to Melbourne. We have Fremantle, we have Ho Chi Minh City, we have Havana, we have Helsinki, Hiroshima. We have Johannesburg. It reminds me of Queensland under our previous Prime Minister. Premier. I am blonde. We have Kuwait City, which has a thriving building industry, but not much else. We have Kuala Lumpur. Not even your phonics could help you spell that one, kiddies. We look at Melbourne and we say, well, it is a true democratic city. There are 7 city councils, and if you want to speak to your local mayor, if you want to have your voice heard in terms of city affairs, you can. Because of those 7 city councils, it is true representative government. The streetscape in Melbourne ranks it up there with the best. There are wide streets, there are seats on those streets, there are fairy lights in the trees of the streets, and trams run right through the middle. I love the streets. The weather in Melbourne. There are social benefits in that you can stay inside and talk to your family. There are economic benefits. You can use all your clothes and your umbrella every single day. And Super Jeff reigns supreme. He's the only politician in the world who can close 12 schools in a single bound. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is no substitute for quality.
Thanks, Tanya. It's good to see you two. We can always do with more blondes on television, I say. Over to the negative team now, and it's Anthea Roberts.
I come up here today and I ask myself, why? Why is Queensland supporting Melbourne? And I've come up with two main reasons. Firstly, anyone that has their claim to fame being the big banana, the big prawn and the big pineapple will probably think Jeff Kennett was a nice addition to the group. But then we came to the more important and fundamental reason. Queensland can't win the State of Origin. Queensland can't win the Sheffield Shield. And Melbourne couldn't win the Olympics. And so it's all losers on this side, ladies and gentlemen. But then we come to the real reason, what we're really focusing on. Because it's not Melbourne that's the best city in the world. It's Canberra. And I'm sure you're in agreement there. Because we've got to come down to the two basic things about a city. It is the people and it is the attractions that make it. Now let us look at the people of Melbourne versus ACT. And what we have is basically politicians versus the police. So what we do is we look over at Canberra. And Canberra is wonderful. I mean, you have the public servants to make fun of to make life interesting. Have you ever heard the joke, why can't a public servant look out the window in the morning? Because then they'd have nothing to do in the afternoon. And ladies and gentlemen, frankly, it's true. And then we come down to tourist attractions, the attractions of a city. And you have the Yarra River, which is really a tourist attraction for those without a life. But more than that, normal rivers have sludge on the bottom and water on the top. Yeah, the Yarra River, however, is the only river in the world to run upside down, and my God, that is a feat, but not something to be proud of, Cupid. And then we come to the idea of, how's that compared to Canberra? Well, Canberra's got a Parliament House that you can grass ski down. Wow! I think we're with Canberra here. So what you can basically see tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is Melbourne is not the best city in the world. Melbourne really isn't even worth calling a city. And to quote a joke that I heard when I first came to this city, why is the Tasmanian island slowly moving north? Quite frankly, because Melbourne sucks.
Thanks, Anthea. Well, it's state against state, mate against mate as the 8 top talkers of the tournament try for the title. More after this. Final for debate 1994. Now we're going to hear from Chris Lahovich from Tasmania.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes I get depressed. Very depressed. I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders and there's no reason for living. And then I think of Melbourne, and I know that there is a God in heaven, and I know that he loves us all. Because Melbourne is more than a city. Melbourne is the reason why I live. Melbourne is the reason why countless people live. Melbourne is such a good city, Sydney had to use devious, underhanded tactics to stop it from getting the Olympics. And we had the second speaker from the negative. She tried to prove that Melbourne wasn't the best city in the world by using Canberra. 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 Our second speaker took you through the A to L of why of cities which are much, much worse than Melbourne. And I'm going to take you, surprisingly enough, through the L to Z. The first one is Launceston. Launceston's in Tasmania. It's the second biggest city in Tasmania. Launceston. Launceston, Launceston, Launceston. The second one is Medellin. I was going to make a really funny joke about Medellin, but since this is aimed at 11 to 13-year-olds, I won't. N is nowhere, because there is nowhere better than Melbourne. I believe that Melbourne was formed due to divine intervention. That's just my belief. Nowhere is better than Melbourne. O is Omsk. Omsk is the most remote city in Siberia. P is Phnom Penh. I had an even funnier joke about that. Q is Queenstown, the only city in the world which has direct international flights to Hobart. R is Rio de Janeiro, S Sarajevo, T 3 Mile Island. I had a funny one about that as well. And Melbourne is the greatest city on earth.
Thanks, Chris. Chris, tell me, does Charles write your jokes too? Third speaker for the negative side now, Leah Ma.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, Chris being from Hobart, of course, he would be the expert on interesting cities. And he's right. Melbourne is the reason why countless people live. It's the reason why countless people live in Sydney. But I'm sure the complete ridicularity of his argument has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that he's a blonde Tasmanian. And I was trying to think of some personal jokes to make about Tanya, and then I thought, nah. So my job today is to look at all the interesting things that happen in Melbourne. No, seriously, folks. Let's look at the history of Melbourne. This has actually been fabricated and given to us as a lie so we wouldn't be embarrassed. The only reason Melbourne was settled was because Britain had nowhere to put its convicts that were convicted of being so boring they were a danger to society. And as we can see, this legacy continues. But now, luckily, they don't put you in jail for being boring in Melbourne anymore. They make you premier. But you've got to admire the Melbanians for being able to carry off their complete and utter boredom with such style. I mean, all you need is a really funky bow tie and a really funky fez, and you become a raving sex symbol. A perfect example of this is our own Robert Chappell. I'll be seeing you after. So let's look at other cities. France has its lovers. The Italians are famous for their cooking. Japanese are famous for their diligence. And the Melbanians are famous for having the strength and courage to live with themselves. The main ingredient to a city is people. And all you have to do is look around in Melbourne to realise that it cannot possibly be the best city on earth. Thank you.
Thanks, Leah. To wrap up now for the affirmative team, here's the Northern Territory, Sansia Colgrave.
Madam President, like Watsonia, there is no substitute for quality, and that is why we're here, to prove that this city right here, Melbourne, is the greatest city in the world. And ladies and gentlemen, here are 4 reasons why Melbourne is so. We firstly have the Sydney Cider. Now, he showed us the quality of Sydney education, that he cannot tell the difference between city and settee. Then we have the ACT girl. She lives in Canberra, and as we said, Canberra, Canberra, Canberra. The greatest feature there is a $1 million flagpole. Whoa. And then we have the girl from Perth. Well, I must say, being the most isolated capital city in Australia really must do something to people. Except she's got one good thing about her. She has great taste in men. Robert Chappell, we all love you. You are living proof that Melbourne is the greatest city on earth. And then the last one will be from South Australia, who have not heard from yet, thank God. But let's move on to the other cities that we have to choose from. Because if you're looking at Melbourne as the greatest city, you've got to realise that everything fails in comparison. First of all, we have Auckland. Well, the simple fact about Auckland is that we have more jokes about Auckland than we do about Tasmania. Second one is Chernobyl, where they've got a high workers' compensation. And we have 1.5-minute working shifts. Then there's Darwin. Well, coming from Darwin, I've got to say it's a city that boasts the fact that it has the busiest McDonald's in Australia. Yes. Then there's Hobart. Need we say more? Kuwait City, where if you're a carpenter, you have it made. Xanadu, what can I say but Olivia Newton-John? And the fact that it starts with X, the only one we could find that started with X. And then there's Yorkshire. Well, any place that calls itself after a pudding, really that's got to be the best place in the world. Quite simply, Melbourne is fantastic. Melbourne is the best. It's got politics. No one can look sexier in a Superman suit than Jeff Kennett. It's got sport. Any place that encourages grown men to run around on a field in tight little shorts has got my approval. It's got trams. It's got weather. Sunshine is too overrated. It has everything. Melbourne, quite frankly, is quality, and as we've all said, there is no substitute for quality.
Thanks, Sansia. To wrap up for the negative team now, here's South Australia's Andrew Dwyer.
Thank you, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen,
I want you to think of Melbourne as the hospice of Australia. It can possibly give us some short-term palliative care, but never a cure. They've tried to tell us that Melbourne is one of the great cities of the world, but I'm here to tell you that it's one of the great sewerage systems of the world. The basic problem is that when we came to Melbourne, everybody wanted to know just, well, what had happened? Had somebody died there? And to their third speaker, I'd be depressed if I was Tasmanian as well. The opposition's argument has basically 20 flaws to it, and there's some method. And the first one is that Rob Chappell's headwear has nothing to do with this debate. And the last 19 I've basically forgotten, but they weren't important. We've been on from the opposition a bit of a Kon-Tiki tour of the world's cities, but by the way, Madam President, you'd enjoy a Kon-Tiki tour, wouldn't you? And then we had quality in Melbourne, but I don't think we'll even bother to discuss that, will we? Because the basic problem is that the best thing about coming to Melbourne here is the fact that in a week's time we're leaving. But we shouldn't be too harsh on Channel 10 because there was some complaint that Melbourne might be a bit too cold for us, and so they suggested a warmer climate, possibly Antarctica. But the basic problem was Channel 10 didn't have studios there. I think Ava Gardner summed up about Melbourne when she was filming her film On the Beach, when she said, "This really is just the most fabulous place in the world to make a movie about the end of the world." We could list, ladies and gentlemen, 1,000 cities that are better than Melbourne, and they're only the ones that are on the same line of latitude.
Thanks, Andrew. I don't get it, but thanks anyway. After the break, our adjudicators will announce who is the Supreme Speaker of the 1994 Network 10 debate. Choose between these 8 fine speakers, but the adjudicators have chosen the Supreme Speaker of Debate 94, and with that decision, here's James Hook.
Thanks, Kristen. We thought you did especially well in the debate this afternoon. What we'd say is this debate was one about Melbourne, whether people who live in Melbourne are citizens or they're victims. There was a bit of problem with terminology. Some people called them Melbournians, some people called them Melbanians, others referred to them as Melbournoids. We weren't really sure what the proper terminology was. There were some ripper jokes in this debate, some humdingers. That hat gag went down a treat. The other thing we'd say is there were some very good blonde jokes, and there were some people who were very good blonde jokes within the debate itself. We thought, however, that some of those jokes were a little insensitive, given that there were obviously people with a peroxide dependence problem in the debate today. It was a split decision as to who the best speaker was. That really means that one of the adjudicators got it wrong, and 2 of the rest of us got it right. That decision was to the best coached member of the debate, Jeremy Hymans of New South Wales.
Thanks, congratulations, Jeremy. You did really well. I think Jeremy's a well-deserved winner too, because you performed so well during the competition, but you had some tough competition, didn't you?
Yeah, it's been a terrific competition. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeremy. 1994. Today, one of the teams here today, the Northern Territory or South Australia, will take home the Network 10 trophy, the culmination of 3 months of debating here on Channel 10. It's worth noting that the affirmative team from the Northern Territory have already achieved enormous success by even being here today. They are the first team from the Northern Territory to ever reach a national debating final, so special welcome to them and congratulations on that achievement. We welcome from the Northern Territory Georgia Holt, Michael Devlin and Sansia Colgrave, and their opposition from South Australia, Todd Golding, Andrew Dwyer and Andrew Gormley. The topic today is that we should be more like Japan. To launch the debate, here's Georgia Holt.
Madam President, a significant difference between Australia and Japan is business success. Australia is lagging and Japan is leading the world. We, Australia, should become more like Japan in this area. To become more like Japan is to adopt some of the aspects of Japanese business. Australia should become more like Japan in business because it will improve Australia's economic performance and this will benefit the whole Australian community. I, as first speaker, will talk about Japanese workers and how Australian workers should become more like Japanese workers. Our second speaker will talk about a Japanese business and why Australian business should become more like that. Australian workers should become more like Japanese workers because Japanese workers have a better attitude to their company they work for and a better work ethic. This means that Japan has a stronger economy, quality products made cheaply. The first reason why Australian workers should become more like Japanese workers is attitude to the company they work for. The Australian attitude is that the company is responsible for them. Therefore, they ask for more money, more time off. The result is the business cannot support itself strongly on the international market. And the employees will eventually lose their job or not be paid as much as they would like to be. The Japanese attitude, however, is to put the company first. They do this because Japanese companies offer their workers shares in the business, which gives them a sense of belonging and owning. They work harder because of it. Two major examples of this are Toyota and Mitsubishi, which offer shares to their companies. Employees are supported by the company they work from cradle to the tomb. And the employee and company in Japan are responsible to each other totally. Example of this is Toyota City in Japan. 1.3 million residents, 100% employment. The second reason why Australians should become more like Japan is because of work ethic. This is encouraged by the relationship between companies and the workers. Japanese people do more work. They work 6 days a week and take only 1 holiday per year, if they even take that. Australians, however, expect to have more holidays and take more time off. If Australians were willing to work harder and more efficiently to produce more products to export, they could improve their economic standing. Australian workers should be more like Japanese workers in two ways: more cooperative with relationships with their employers, and they should work harder. The benefits are much better quality products to offer more cheaply to the world market, because the more we export, the more jobs we provide for an ever-expanding workforce.
Thanks, Georgia. To open the case now for the negative team, here's South Australia's Todd Golding.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen, to go straight to the heart of what the opposition have said, well, it's a very clinical assessment, isn't it? It's all economics, money, money, and more economics. And it's all about, I quote, cheap products. But how do they get these cheap products? Through putting their workers through hell, ladies and gentlemen. It's a very clinical assessment, as I said. They have painted Japan as a utopia. It is certainly not. The workers in Japan get a far worse deal than we do here in Australia. They said that in Japan the workers are loyal to the company. Yes, they are loyal to the company, because if they are not, they are going to be sacked. It is all part of the Japanese work ethic, which is work, work, work. But what is the cost? The cost is quality of life. The lifestyle that we have here in Australia, ladies and gentlemen. We have a work ethic, yes. Our work ethic is that we will work provided we are paid for it. And that is the way it should be. Not working 6 days a week and things like that, because you lose quality of life. We have quality of life here, but furthermore, ladies and gentlemen, we also have some economic success. What they want is the economic miracle that has seen the blood come out of the Japanese people. No, what we will be telling you is that the economic benefits don't justify the sacrifices. The issue here today is clearly economic benefits, but at what cost? And the cost is social sacrifices. I, as first speaker, will address Japanese and Australian societies, the difference, their different natures, and specifically education systems. My second speaker, Andrew, will address the workplace, the cost to workers of the economic miracle. There are distinct differences between the cultures of Japan and Australia. Japan is a well-structured society, rigid. There is a social order with the emperor at the top and everybody else filtered down to the bottom, and everybody is in their place and you don't move from that place. Is that the kind of society we want to go to? No, because in Australia, we don't care who your parents are, because everybody is born equally. Furthermore, the basis of the Japanese economic miracle is this work ethic, which puts the workers virtually into slavery, the blood, sweat and tears of those workers. In Australia, we have a work ethic, but we also have a work ethic to succeed for ourselves, not for the company and the country so much to succeed. It's loyalty to ourselves. This is much better environment to live in. We have economic benefits here in Australia. but we don't want the social costs of Japan, where there are limited rights. Let's look at education. It's so competitive in Japan. Kindergarten students doing 1.5-hour exams, highest suicide rate in the world for Year 12 students because of the stress and all the pressure. We do not want this in Australia, and this is what we will be going to if we push this hard economic line which they want. No, we don't want the social costs that Japan has had to go through. The economic benefits are not worth the social sacrifices.
Thanks, Todd. To continue the case now for the Northern Territory in this grand final debate, it's over to Michael Devlin.
Madam President, we should be more like Japan because it will improve Australia's economic performance, and this will benefit all Australians. Economics, money, money, economics. That is exactly what our debate is about today. The fact is, money supports our lifestyle. Money provides something which enables us to maintain the lifestyle we cherish at the moment. It gives us the money to support our identity. We need monetary support to be successful. Therefore, when this debate says that we should be more like Japan, it means we take some aspect, not every single aspect, not the suicidal education, not necessarily every single bit about unemployment or employment, but the fact is we take parts of Japan and we move towards being more like Japan in those areas. And that area we're talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, is the economic success of Japan.